So you were kind of a prankster in high school.
Uh, yeah. So,
Can you share with our dear listeners some of your more famous ones that you pulled off?
I think the statutes of limitations might be out on a lot of them.
Right. So you're safe.
I think so. We put the salmon in the pool. We lived very close. Well, when I say close, I mean you can travel, take you about an hour or so to get to one of the tributaries of Lake Ontario, and the big salmon would come in. So we took the salmon. We took the morning off. We left about 4:00 in the morning. We took 2 big coolers with aerators.
Just gonna skip our morning classes.
Yeah, we're going fishing. Okay, all right.
It's more important,
right? And I to this day I can't remember if we decided that morning that we were going to do this or if we planned this. I can't.
No, knowing you, that was a on the spur of the moment decision.
Right.
You just had them and then was like, well, I don't know what to do with them. We have to show up to school at some point.
Right.
And no, that was you were spur of the moment.
Okay, and this goes so far back that this is during snagging season. Okay, there was actually a snagging season where you can go snag your fish and you can go home. You know, get whatever. So you don't really hurt them. So should I say hurt them? You don't really kill them in this process. Anyways, so you could get a salmon. They'll be coming up between your feet, and you got one, and it's in the tail. It's not hurt. It's not anything. And you drop it in your little thing, and you go home. You got fresh fish. Anyways. So we were like, oh, man, let's take some of these.
I know you were really concerned about not hurting the fish because you put it into a chlorine pool, but continue.
That was after the fact, and that is not. Okay, that's probably how it went.
So you get to school. How many salmon do you have?
We have 3. We have 3 salmon.
Okay.
And
how many of you were involved in this?
3 of us.
Okay.
And I won't put them under the bus.
Sure.
They know who they are. And Shad. Anyway, so we brought him back during the lunch hour. So we got like right off the bat. So we get back in the car, boom, we shoot back. We go, this is going to be one of our senior pranks for the year because we were seniors. I'm like, oh yeah, good idea. So there's none of these cops at the doors and whatever, and rent cops and all that stuff. And so we go in the back door and we go between periods when all the lunches are because there's no swimming during that time, and we and dump them in the thing. Now, we thought they would die within 20 minutes. We thought, okay, they're, next classes are going to come in right after. No, they lasted like 3-4 hours. The one thing that we didn't know,
PETA's going to be all over our ass.
The one thing they did?
What?
I didn't know they had to drain the pool. Like,
it was drain the pool day? Or?
No, when something like that happens,
You caused it? Duh.
Sorry, Oscar. I'm sure you've passed on by now. One of my greatest principals ever. You're right. You're awesome. You're awesome. Okay. Lancaster High School.
Did you get caught? Did they know it was you?
Everybody had their suspicions. I mean, we missed first classes. I mean, sure. Yeah. It was no worse than people putting skunk urine in and stuff. If you're hunters, you know what I'm talking about, okay? And we had this stuff in our car, and you shut down the whole second floor, okay? You put 2 drops of that skunk in those heaters, it's game over. Hence, any students watching this, don't do this, okay? Don't do this. It's what we used to be able to get. I guess they call me a Gen Xer now, I guess.
It's like you're on Mythbusters. You're an expert.
Right. We're experts. Okay. We did things right. Okay. You didn't want to go to 4th period, pay $50. We'll put some skunk stuff in that little radiator. You get to go downstairs.
We are not condoning senior pranks.
Nope.
But boy, what a story.
Well, it's different times, man. Different times. It just was. I paid for it. I didn't get to graduate. Okay. Does that make any sense?
Because of that?
Not just that. Well, that added on to my 36 nights of detention, which I never went to. And so they give you suspension, and then they want you to sit in home suspension. Yeah,
worst.
you're like seniors, and I'm like, geez, I'm already working 40 hours a week, man. I'm like screaming. What are you talking about? Let me out of here. Get me out of here.
Welcome to the Teacher's Curse. I'm Annie.
Apparently, I can't say my name right now. Right. I can't say my name right now. Google me. Right. So this is the teacher's curse, and that's what my mother had to go through as a teacher. Complete teacher's curse.
So today I want to dig into something that's a passion project of mine and a passion topic, and probably the reason I got into teaching, and that is the science behind reading and why so many of our older kids, when I say older, I mean like older elementary and beyond, are struggling with reading right now. And I want to kind of pull that apart a little bit. So, before I get into, the articles that we're referencing, what is your biggest thing that you saw early into teaching, when you came in? What was the red flag for you that something was wrong with reading skills?
Well, they started integrating all these books that were picture books into their schooling.
But did you know that at the time, or did you just think that that's
I thought we were walking normal. I thought that.
yeah,
Right.
that's just commonplace, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take it as that. Yeah.
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 Because for me, I I think I've told this story. I'll tell it again because it really is the reason why I really wanted to jump into teaching. And that was when I was working for a radio station in Utah. And we were the people who kind of set up the different events, right? That the radio personalities would come out to and stuff. It wasn't just a radio station, it was a full production company. So there at the state fair, we had this cool booth where kids could pretend to be newscasters. And all they had to do was read the teleprompter that was scrolling. And it was probably second grade level, maybe first grade. And it was actually supposed to promote reading. The message on the teleprompter was about reading, right? And the kids got to play newscaster. Instantly, I noticed that of the 10 kids for every 10 kids that came in, one of them probably was able to make it through the prompt.
Oh, really?
Older kids too. I
Wow.
mean, these are like 10, 11, 12-year-olds
Right. Oh, okay.
that are doing
right.
it. And they couldn't, and of course they'd kind of like goof around and be like, but it wasn't to be funny. It was because I could tell they couldn't read it.
Right.
And I was like, this is not a difficult text.
Yeah.
What is going
And
on?
to read, right? Mm-hmm.
So then I enter into the teaching sphere,
Mm-hmm.
and we are surrounded by kids who are 3 years behind their projected reading level,
Right.
consistently.
Right.
And I thought, gosh, this is a huge problem, because it was going. I'm going. This is going to lead to an illiterate generation.
And here
We
we
can't
are.
have that. Yeah, and that was 10, 12, 15 years ago that I was noticing that, and it's far worse now.
Never like crystal balls.
But when we opened, well, this was a couple years ago, I had come across this story about a gal who said that she had struggled with reading her whole life, and she went into her child's class and was watching the teacher do reading instruction. I guess that was back in the days when parents were welcome into the classroom.
Oh.
Anyway,
Right.
topic for another time. You should be allowed to go into your child's classroom and see what they're doing. But she was noticing that the teacher was prompting the kids, first, second grade, I think, and with these, if you can't read the word, look at the picture above. And she gave them like these 3 different prompts. Take your best guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you still don't know, just skip it.
Mm-hmm.
And the mom was like, those are all of the strategies I taught myself. She says, and I am not a good reader.
Mm-hmm.
So I started digging into this a little more. And as it turns out, curricula in the past decade have become really heavy on incorporating pictures to replace phonics.
Right.
And now we see all the time kids come in. If we give them a text that doesn't have pictures, they panic. If we give them a text that has pictures, they will rely on them.
Right.
And then guess wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not learning reading.
No.
They're learning really bad survival skills.
I'm gonna jump on that, right? So yeah, they learn these because survival skills coming from somebody who is dyslexic and ADHD. I'm the gamut of what an IEP looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I was like. All right. So, like when you're remind me, what were we going through? What did you just say?
About pictures
Yeah, well, the
and
pictures.
survival skills.
Oh, the survival skills. So a person like me needs a tactile or a visual. Okay, when you're going through. So we're talking about, we're not that many dyslexics out there and serious understandings of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and especially back in my day when we were kids, but they still would not let us really have picture books, other than a strategy for us to move around society, right? You look down, you see some things, okay. If you can't read those texts or whichever, so there are those survival skills that are put in there. But I as a teacher and as a professional, when you look at the bigger picture, when we started seeing that turn of no understanding of what they're reading there, or even trying to look at that picture, you can't read that way. I couldn't learn to read that way because you become dependent.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why even all of our kids who are lower readers and on the spectrum or special ed or however you want to categorize that, we don't give them pictures, and we haven't. And me and Ann both worked in an autistic school. I think we did it for 4 years, and my kids were proficient. I took them from 2 years back, and they were in ninth grade. They were 2 years back, and took them to proficiency for the majority of my class. I got 78, 76s proficiency, and that was because I didn't use the pictures for them to look at, even at an older age.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that works for the younger ages too. When they go off and interpret, like, okay, go to your learning circle, and they go to the learning circle and they can look at all their picture books if they want. You notice though that when you don't have that, they actually try to read.
Yeah.
It's a very good experiment.
Yeah, because our brain has the ability to decode, and that's
Right.
exactly what it's called, decoding skills. Because each letter is a picture,
right,
that represents a sound.
Beautiful.
Right, and those sounds are put together, and it creates words.
Right.
And so there's a couple other things. If a child doesn't have a strong vocabulary just auditorily,
Mm-hmm.
right, what they're able to pick up in those really early formative years, in their toddler years leading up to kindergarten, if they don't have enough vocabulary to back it, that's another thing that sets them back.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all of these other things that we have tried to implement in response to growing classroom sizes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So of course it's much easier to put a picture up to the class and then put the word up somewhere and say, "Okay, what is this?" But they're focusing on the picture. They're not
Right.
focusing on sounding it out.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my teachers would do where we would have to read it and then we got the picture because there is a use for pictures.
There certainly is. Yes.
Especially if we're talking about preschool, kindergarten, where they're
Mm-hmm.
learning letter sounds.
Right.
Because if they see a picture of an alligator, that helps them go, "Oh, that says ah, 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 ah," right? And then you
Right.
move
And
through.
then you
So that stuff's
alligator,
great. Yep.
alligator. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It can also help with setting in comprehension
Right.
skills, right? So you sound out the word,
Mm-hmm.
and then while your brain's processing, well, what does that even mean? And you see a visual of it, then it sets it in. But if you are using that picture in front of the word, in front of sounding it out, then it trains our brain to become completely reliant
Mm-hmm.
on the picture. So the result is we have fourth, fifth, and sixth graders because they don't test fourth, fifth, and sixth graders.
Right.
The reason why they test the third grade is because decoding skills should be set by that point.
Put in place.
Right.
Yep.
So they're hoping that by the time a child's reached third grade, they already have them flagged for reading difficulties.
Right.
So we're getting fourth, fifth, and sixth graders who should be able to read a second grade, third grade text no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not able to do it.
Right.
Because they have learned to supplement, they have learned to guess, and if they don't have a picture, they panic.
Right.
So that was I want to make sure that our listeners are understanding, why we say that we do things so differently. It's really, we do things more classically, right? We're not trying to do all of these fancy other new age stuff that gets thrown in because they think that that's useful.
Yeah.
I tend to be more old fashioned in terms of the methodology that I use.
Right. Well, I'm at the point. I'm always have been. I stick with what works, and that's always worked. And
Phonics works.
Phonics works. And when what happened in public schools too is that they change the curriculum every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started seeing this inconsistencies throughout, you can't work like that. And you don't want to add conspiracy theories into things, but is it because of because of technology and they have to understand pictures through technologies? Do they have to? Why are we doing this to our children? We don't understand. So, when we do an assessment, we will do a computer generated one. We'll do something for them. But most of ours are done by paper and pencil.
Mm-hmm.
So we can get a picture of where, no pun intended. So we can get an overlook at their true abilities to be able to function in society as well, because we still do use paper, pencil, pen, all that stuff still exists widely.
Because you want it to be minimal.
Yeah.
What they're able to achieve, with the least amount of tools available.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we approached IEPs as well, right?
Right.
Those accommodations were set, but really the goal should be to get them to be able to do it without those accommodations that are set.
So that's why they don't like benchmarks, because benchmarks in IEPs are awesome and they should be mandatory because they really check you in at every 3 months, and you could do 6 months if you want to, every 6 months. You could set the winner.
Yeah.
They're
And
good
how
measures.
awesome did our students do
Mm-hmm.
who were on IEPs?
Yeah, we're taking.
By the time it took, by the
off.
time the test came around,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't ask for the accommodations. They knew that they were available to them, but they wanted to do it as a baseline. And I think it's great. Pause. Oh, we do get a lot of families that come in saying that their child is dyslexic. without having an actual diagnosis.
Right.
It's more and more every year, it seems like. And we had to kind of get to a point where we were really upfront with the parents of like, they're probably not dyslexic.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's probably a lack of instruction.
Right. And I would say 80% of the time, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, because then they can just turn it around. We certainly have a few
that are.
where I'm like that.
You know.
Yep.
And like I said, that's our specialty. That's I mean, we both have our master's degrees. We don't have to, and we see a lot of children. I mean, a lot. I mean, I'm in like thousands. And so why is that, do you think? Is it because they don't get to go into the schools and read with their children while they're there? They don't have time at home to understand what that looks like because they're so frustrated with the work. So what is it?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. All the things that we talked about. So they're not focusing on phonics for reading. So that decoding is not set in the way that it should be. And the later that you start the decoding process, the longer it takes for that letter and sound recognition to come along.
Because I would think they would argue and say, yes, we are. And, I want to make it clear that this is our gut feelings, as many as children as we've seen and come back into us, that they're not in schools. Even though when we were walking away from it, we knew that they weren't.
Yeah. The other thing, like I was talking about the other day, because we teach cursive.
Yeah.
And I have a couple who I suspect have dyslexia, but they can read cursive beautifully. Yeah. So I dug into that a little bit, and it turns out that cursive writing actually improves dyslexics' ability to decode.
Yeah.
Because there's no letters in the cursive alphabet that can be confused for any other letter, like our B's and D's and P's and Q's and N's and U's. So they all represent their own thing. And I said, well, what a disservice we're doing to the true dyslexic community.
Right.
Because we are not incorporating cursive anymore.
Right.
Where that used to be
fluent
standard. It was across all schools.
Yeah.
It was expected. So it could be a matter that they are experiencing some dyslexia. And it's just arising more so because they're reading more and more print instead of dealing with cursive. So we're identifying it more often.
And I can kind of play on this because I loved cursive writing when I was younger, maybe possibly because of the same thing that you're saying right now. But somebody who is dyslexic, what happens is they don't, once they start the cursive, they can't continue it. Okay, so you'll start out in cursive, and then all of a sudden you'll do letters, and then you'll do cursive again, because my mind says these are the ones that are supposed to go together, and these are not. These are detached. So in so many ways, unbeknownst, and just kind of how it goes. But I do believe there's studies on this too. There's literature on this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's literature.
I know. I don't have any pulled up right. I didn't think I was going to be talking about this.
No. But that's
specific thing. But yeah, it's out there that cursive writing actually is good for the dyslexic brain. And I have seen it with my own eyes. So, but if they're not learning the cursive alphabet, then it's impossible, right? It does nobody.
Well, what age
good
do you start them at? Right? I mean, think of it like fourth grade. You should be into the cursive pretty good. Third grade, start them in.
A lot of schools start at second, or they used to. They would start at second grade. I started in third grade. When those decoding skills are supposed to be set in.
Right.
So,
Yeah, perfect.
I if you're noticing that your child is struggling with reading, see if it's a matter of they're reliant on pictures to help them guess what's in there, and get it back to a focus on phonics and making them sound out. I our poor students, it's so painful in the beginning because I have to retrain them to sound out every single letter as they go through.
Right.
And it seems so slow. It's a slow process, but then once it clicks and takes over, then it's just awesome. So, please make sure to like and subscribe to our page on YouTube. You can also follow us on Spotify if you are interested in any of the services we offer at Go and Grow. Check out gogrowtutor.com. Thanks so much for being with us. If you have anything you'd like us to talk about on this podcast, send us an email at teacherscursepod@gmail.com. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Annie.
I'm Trouble.
And Leather Barrow's out.